Hey guys, welcome back to TikTok. So recently I did a YouTube video detailing why one would either like or dislike the new Game of Thrones episode, Season 8 Episode 3, but a user by the name of Benny Adderall noted that I should have given my own opinion on the matter, and thus welcome to the video, which I'm going to try and keep very brief. So without further ado, I'm going to first point out what I liked about the episode, and then I'll move on to what I disliked. Number 1. The music. I loved the amazing score that they used for the scene of the Night King's walk towards Bran. Definitely one of my favorites alongside the Light of the Seven soundtrack that was used in the explosion of the Sept of Baelor in Season 6 Episode 10. Number 2, the atmosphere. How the episode was very efficiently able to set up the White Walkers in the Army of the Dead as a threat that was not to be trifled with, even though the series has been doing that the entire time. The display of the firelit Dothraki blades going out one by one was menacing and induced a sense of fear. I was scared when I saw that scene. The scene, however, was a little illogical as the Dothraki was wasted just like that, but perhaps they couldn't use the Dothraki as a defensive force due to their expertise leaning more towards offensive strategies. Nevertheless, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time, and I was in constant wonder of whether or not any of the characters would die, and that thought was on my mind throughout the entire episode. Number 3, how the whites were overpowering the forces of good with just massive numbers, and it seemed like it was a pretty hopeless fight. I did not think for a moment that they were actually going to win, and that was badass. No complaints there. You actually managed to convince me that the main characters were going to lose and some important people were going to die, but of course that didn't happen. Okay, number 4, Melisandre's return and her magic actually working to help them with the trenches and the initial fire enchantment to the Dothraki blades. I always appreciate more magic mumbo jumbo, and it was a beautiful scene. Watching all of the Dothraki blades light up was pretty cool. Look at all of them on fire. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to what I disliked. The first thing that I definitely disliked was the plot armor. Characters like Jaime, Brienne, and Sam were able to survive for the longest time despite being backed up to the wall by whites for almost half an hour maybe, and Sam especially, who is still very in character with the crying and bitching, somehow survives with just waving his knife around like a maniac. That really broke immersion for me. Number 2, Jon Snow being unable to light the trench despite Davos screaming for help and signaling for one of the dragons to assist. He was perched up on Rhaegal on one of the walls of the Winterfell castle on top of Rhaegal. Was he really unable to see or hear that? He could have helped out at that moment. Number 3, Bran doing practically nothing this entire episode. He did hand Arya Stark the dagger, which resulted in the eventual demise of the Night King with its use, but for the majority of the episode he was almost entirely irrelevant aside from the fact that they used him as bait for the Night King. He only warged into a group of ravens once to scout on the Night King's activities, and that was it. It felt like his journey to be the three-eyed raven amounted to nothing truly consequential. Number 4, the Night King and his death. I have no issue with Arya Stark dealing the final blow. I do, however, have numerous issues with how we arrived at this point, how it happened, and the fact that the Night King died too soon. I felt that narratively the show built up the Army of the Dead as a force that couldn't be stopped in just one episode, and the conclusion felt very rushed, and having them lose for literally 99% of the battle only for them to win at the very last moment was a little anticlimactic. It would also have been appreciated if the Night King's story was fleshed out a lot more and we got to know more about him lore-wise. The prince that was promised at the Azor Ahai prophecy was also left largely ignored, with Jon Snow having almost no part in the Night King's demise, aside from the fact that he rallied armies to combat the Army of the Dead, which didn't really amount to much as they were very easily demolished. I would have also preferred if Jon Snow had an assist with the final blow that was dealt to the Night King. Yeah, I know, it would have been cliche as hell for Jon Snow to have a one-on-one fight with him, and the word cliche does have a negative connotation, but sometimes being cliche isn't necessarily bad, you know? It would have certainly added more impact to his revival, and it would feel at home with his character arc. In this instance, I think we could have used a bit of that cliche, and I'm certain fans would have definitely enjoyed having that scene. I know I would. It just feels like there's so much more story to tell on this front, and it's quite a shame that the Night King met his demise so soon. I also dislike that a lot of fans are perpetuating that the series had been hinting at this plot twist from the start, when even the show writers themselves only came up with it while filming season 7. They admitted to it. And yeah, I get it. Arya is now this super badass ninja assassin, but it felt like she materialized out of nowhere just before she killed the Night King. If the show put a little bit of effort into setting up that scene, you know, maybe showing us how Arya managed to sneak past all those White Walkers and whites, then the scene would have felt a little more realistic, because as it stands, it's super far-fetched. It seems like a thing that just couldn't happen. And last but not least, the lighting. The episode was just too dark. I really couldn't see much and had to turn up my brightness quite a bit. I'm not sure it's because I have what appears to be a crappy display, but I've had no issue with any other TV shows thus far. So those are my thoughts on the episode. I know I share this opinion with many, and I also know that many have a different one. However, I would like to ask for a small favor from all of the fans of the show, and that is to keep the discussion civil. I've seen some terrible arguments, very unfortunate ones, on Reddit, Facebook, and Twitter, and would prefer if we could settle our differences in a more diplomatic tone. No need to call each other names, no need to call each other stupid. Overall, I liked the episode for the first half and really disliked the second half and the last 10 minutes especially. But despite that, I will definitely still keep up with Game of Thrones until the finale because I just love the show. It is just unfortunate that they really dropped the ball on this episode. And yeah, that's the TikTok. I hope you liked the video and I'll see you next time. Peace.